What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again talking college football. And today we are discussing the single game, December the 29th, that is Monday. Georgia Southern takes on Appalachian State. Before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a like on the video. Those two things help us immensely. It gets us in front of new viewers. It helps us grow and honestly just continue doing this. So thank you if you've done that. It really does help a ton. We discuss sides and totals as we break down these games. So if you or somebody you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But let's dive right in. This is a fun game. It is a conference game. It is a huge rivalry game between these two teams. This is the Birmingham Bowl. Georgia Southern is currently a 7-point favorite in this game. The total is 59.5. Defense optional for both of these teams. We start with coaching changes, player personnel changes, opt-outs, and then we go into resumes, followed by the on-field X's and O's, what to expect. There aren't many coaching changes, at least among head coaches, coordinators, the notable ones for this contest. Georgia Southern does have a few injuries. They don't have any opt-outs, and they don't have any entries into the transfer portal as of yet. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. We're a few days out, and sometimes you don't know a player intends to enter the portal until the game kicks off and they're standing on the sidelines in street clothes. But what we do know, O.J. Arnold, their stud running back, he missed their season finale. No word on his status. Their backup, David Mabinga, has been out for a while. We'll talk about what that might mean. Defensive tackle, Devin Lowe missed their last game. Chance Gamble at corner has been out for a while. Same with River Helms at tight end, as well as Kalen Williams at tackle. If you did see an opt-out, Camden Brown at receiver is the big one to watch, but no word on his status. Yeah, he's a 1,000-yard receiver, an Auburn transfer. Looks like he's going to go tentatively. App State, they have 31 players in the portal. That doesn't mean they won't play in the game. We just flat out don't know. Some teams allow transfers to play, some do not. And even if they allow it, doesn't mean the players will. So here are the notable ones. Both QBs, A.J. Swan and J.J. Cole, Davion Dozier at receiver, Griffin Scroggs at offensive line, Dental Nix offensive line, Dylan Manuel D tackle, Rondo Porter D tackle, Brayshawn Littlejohn at linebacker, Elijah McCantos at safety. Those are the main ones. And a lot of those guys, they might not all be starters, but they all play at least to some degree. There are also some injuries. Jaden Barnes at receiver. He's their leading receiver, missed week 14. Isaiah Cummings at tight end has been out for a while. Jaden McBurrows, probably their best corner, has been out for a while. And Thomas Davis at defensive tackle. That means we're down to maybe a skeleton crew for App State, depending on who plays. So resume-wise, to get here, Georgia Southern did beat 3 bowl-eligible teams, App State being one of them. More on them in a second. That was a 2-point win. Jacksonville State, they beat by a touchdown, and Coastal Carolina, they beat by 5. As for losses, Georgia Southern lost to Fresno State. That was a blowout. USC, blowout. James Madison, blowout. Southern Miss, they only lost by a field goal, and they actually had a 57% post-game win expectancy. They lost to Arkansas State by 10, and then they got blown out by Old Dominion. On the App State side, App State was not bowl eligible. They had to basically... Well, first of all, there were a couple teams that opted out that could have played, like an Iowa State, for example. And then they went down the list. So there's a tiering system. Teams like Florida State, Auburn were a little higher up on the list. They also declined bowl eligibility, as well as many others. So this took numerous declined bowl bids to get to App State, and they were the team that eventually accepted. So this was not a bowl team. They got there by default. They did not beat a single bowl-eligible team this season. Their best win is probably Marshall or Oregon State. And the funny thing about both of those wins, both single digits. Marshall was by 2 points. App State had a 14% post-game win expectancy. Against Oregon State, they win by 4 with a 12% post-game win expectancy. This was a far from pretty season for Appalachian State. As for losses, Southern Miss, that was a double-digit loss. Boise State, they were blown out. Coastal Carolina was single digits, but it was a complete shootout. Old Dominion, probably their best game, win or loss. They only lose by 3. Georgia Southern, we talked about that briefly, a 2-point loss. James Madison blown out. And then Arkansas State, they lose by 1 point. kind of a tough season for this App State squad. Let's go to QB. We're going to start with what we know, and we have more knowns on Georgia Southern. This is an offense that likes to pass. They're typically an air raid, and this year they sort of went away from it a little bit, at least to the same degree they'd previously used this air raid system. They were 43rd in pass rate, 40th in pace. J.C. French, he's basically a game manager, and they call this an air raid offense. They throw the ball underneath more often than not. 62.5% completion percentage for him, 7.5 yards per attempt. 13 big-time throws, 11 turnover-worthy plays, and 8 interceptions for J.C. French. He took a lot of sacks, 29. The pressure rate wasn't that bad either. We're talking a 27% pressure rate. That's above average. His individual pressure-to-sack ratio is 24%. That is just way too high for a QB. So the offensive line, we mentioned it, the infrastructure is not bad for this team, especially among the Sun Belt offensive lines. This is one of the better ones you will see. 17th in pass blocking, 62nd in run blocking, without a real weakness. Some players are closer to average. That mainly comes on the interior with Pashawn Wimbley, Chandler Strong, and Caleb Cook. Tackles were great for this team. Johnny Brown, Robert Wright Jr., this was a good offensive line. And when they could run the ball with O.J. Arnold, who missed the season finale, they were actually a pretty balanced offense. Arnold was at 6.6 yards per carry. He finished with 880 rushing yards. He actually caught 17 passes too. Without him, they turned to Teo Todd and Bryce Baker in a committee. They were both below 4 yards per carry, so there was a pretty significant drop-off. That's a small sample. Arnold just missed the finale, so we didn't get a real long look at Todd or Baker. Maybe they're a little better. But if Arnold comes back, it would be a huge boost for the offense. And then receiver, Camden Brown, 1,049 yards. He's the best player on the offense and the biggest difference maker they have. Behind him, Marcus Sanders, 725 yards. That gives you a good 1-2. Their number 3, Dalen Cobb, has been injured off and on throughout the year. I'm not sure in his status. If he can't go, you're looking at Taylor Bradshaw filling in, who's a pretty distant third compared to Dalen Cobb. So that could weaken the offense a little bit. But overall, this unit is pretty intact. And App State's defense, I'll say this. Most of their opt-outs, transfers, call it what you will, are on offense. They have a few on defense. But overall, they should be a little bit closer to full strength here. The thing is, they were 60th overall and wildly imbalanced. This team was 24th against the run, but 105th in coverage. And even with that on their defensive resume, like coming in 24th, they still showed cracks against the better offenses. James Madison, Marshall, both of those teams hit 6 yards per carry against this App State defense in 2 of the last 3 games. And then they just had their 2 best defensive tackles hit the portal. Again, not 100% sure they don't play, but that's Rondo Porter and Dylan Manuel. Without them, you're dropping to DeNigel Cooper, St. Ferrier. That brings you a lot closer to just average defensive tackle play rather than the 2 studs you were using before. Now, the edge is good. There are some players that you would think might consider portaling or opting out of the game, but this is a huge rivalry, and a lot of the players that are staying have talked about how important it is. One of those players was Kevin Abrams-Verwain, their stud edge rusher. They're going to use Caleb Sandstorm opposite him, who's closer to average, but at least the edge rushing group should be fairly intact. And that's the weird thing about this App State team. There's obviously a lot of kids in the portal, but there's like a core group of guys that have been here that very much care about getting to a bowl. This is their last game. Like, this is the last game Abrams-Verwain will play. And because it's a rivalry, I think they got a couple guys to stick around. Anyway, behind the defensive line, your linebacker Colton Ferris is elite. Counterpart Kyle Arnholt was a mess. It just leaves a weak link. Secondary is pretty good for this team, at least on paper, and that's just kind of in relation to what we expected. They weren't good in the regular season. They're 105th in coverage, but they didn't really have a lot of players leave, at least in the secondary. We're talking just McCantos and Burks. So you have 4 guys that I think are going to play in Zaire Gamble, Emery Floyd, Ethan Johnson, and Jordan Favors. Now, there could be a last-second opt-out. I don't know, but those are all players with starting experience. They might not be the best, but we're not talking about the skeleton crew in the secondary. And all in all, at this point, we're recording this on Saturday morning, the defense is a little more intact than the offense. Can they get a stop against Georgia Southern? They allowed 25 points in the first game. The answer is maybe situationally, but ultimately I expect this Georgia Southern team to have some offensive success, barring a last-second opt-out. Where things get weird is on the App State offense. I mean, I don't know who's playing quarterback. A.J. Swan and J.J. Kohler in the portal. There are rumors that they might play. There's also a lot of smoke that they won't. I don't think it makes a huge difference between the two. Cole's a little better, but not by a ton. Both of them 6.8 yards per attempt. Cole had this slightly higher completion percentage by about 3%. He was at 61%, which isn't great either. The only difference was kind of the big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio. Cole was at 12 big time throws, 8 turnover worthy plays. Swan was at 11 big time throws, 14 turnover worthy plays. So that wasn't even a huge difference, but it did favor Cole. The O-line was all right, 30% pressure rate. One of the big problems was drops. This team had 33 drops. That's immense. But we need to talk about what happens if Cole and Swan sit. Probably looking at some combination of Noah Gillen or Billy Wiles. Who are these guys? Gillen is a really low-level 3-star freshman and a pure pocket passer, according to reports. Billy Wiles has kind of been all over the place. He started with Clemson, couldn't cut it there. Southern Miss, couldn't cut it there. He's been in college for 4 years, and he has a 54% completion percentage, 6.4 yards per attempt, 5 big-time throws, and 17 turnover-worthy plays. A.J. Swan and Cole weren't real difference makers for this team, but it appears there is a significant drop-off between them down to whatever they decide to do between Gillen and Wiles if it comes to that. I don't know. The offensive line for this team was below average through the season, and they just lost one of their starting interior players, Griffin Scroggs, to the portal. Their other guard, Trent Ramsey, was already injured, so that leaves them far from full strength, especially on the inside, which was supposed to be a strength for this team. You look at the tackle position, you have a complete liability in Shamar Jackson. He's a mess. Your other tackle, Jaden Ramsey, is probably your best player at this point, but now instead of having, a strong left side and center, you're kind of just working with one stud and the rest is a little iffy, especially that right tackle spot. So inside, you're looking at Caden Sweat and Will Flowers. We kind of know what we're getting there. It's basically average play, but I don't know who's going to replace Ramsey at left guard. They just don't have a lot of guys that have played snaps that are either healthy or not in the portal. So you could be looking at a real mess, especially on that left side with Shamar Jackson and whoever they decide to plug in at that left guard spot. And that's going to affect everything. You're going to be looking at a weak offensive line with a potential third-string QB. And then they weren't particularly good at the skill players regardless. Like, they were 88th in rushing. Rashad Dubinian handled a lot of work. It wasn't the most efficient work. That's not all his fault. 5 yards per carry, 868 yards, caught 27 balls. They actually were starting to get change of pace back. Jakari Lewis a little more involved too. He operated a lot on third downs. But then at receiver, Jaden Barnes, their leading receiver, has been injured. We don't know if he's back. Their third leading receiver, Davion Dozier, 448 yards. He's in the portal. Some of the depth pieces are in the portal. William Fowles is in the portal. So who do you have left? We do know that Dalton Stroman is going to play, their second leading receiver. He had 570 yards. He's kind of in the same boat as Verwain, where he is a veteran with the program, probably his last game, wants another chance to play in this rivalry, so I get it. He'll be out there. But then who's your second leading receiver? Like, on paper, it's probably tight end David Larkins, and the funny thing is he's not even a starting tight end. Isaiah Cummings has been hurt. So you drop from 374 yards from Cummings to Larkins. He's not a difference maker. And then your wide receiver 2, Sam Mbake, at 191 yards. I don't really know who they're going to use as their 3. This could be a very weak group of skill position players with a third-string quarterback and a skeleton crew offensive line. So now the only redeeming quality is not even with them. It's Georgia Southern had a bottom 5 defense in the country, and they were dead last in rush defense efficiency. They're 133rd in total defense. Now, App State only scored 23 points in the first game where they were at closer to full strength. So what do we get here? I'll say this. The edge group is not terrible. I wish they wouldn't rotate so much. This is one of these teams that rotates 8 guys at least on a given game on the defensive line. They're going to use 4 edge rushers, and 3 of them are pretty good, especially like an MJ Stroud. Davion Rhodes and Jacob Ferguson aren't bad, but then they're using a guy like Kebaseka too much. He was awful this year. The D-line's going to use 4 guys on the inside too. There wasn't a single guy at defensive tackle that even hit average play. Your best is probably Caleb Moore. That's not saying a lot. So that's how part of the reason you get to 136 in run defense. You have no interior presence. They're just getting pushed around inside. The linebackers also struggled. Brandon Tyson and Brendan Harrington are the two main backers. Both of them had problems in the run game. And the secondary, technically the strength of this team, they were 80th in coverage. So only a little better than the front seven, still below average. They were more imbalanced here. So they had two good players, Aiden Jackson at safety, Dorian Smith at corner were pretty good. But that also comes with major weak links. Justin Myers at safety was a mess all season. And towards the end of the year, they were relying on a freshman in Fabo Chaney. He might be good someday, just not ready for the big lights right away as a freshman in the Sun Belt. If you do look for an edge, App State's direction, special teams could be one. Georgia Southern is awful on special teams. They're 119th. App State is 73rd. So not good, but a little better than Georgia Southern for what it's worth. Ultimately, I don't really know how you go anywhere but Georgia Southern right now. The one thing I'll say, this quarterback for App State could change the pick. If you get J.J. Cole or A.J. Swan, I'm not sure it would be enough, but I would at least debate playing that side. Right now, I'm just going to wait for warm-ups and see what happens. We're likely to take this either way, but it's going to come down to the QB situation and who we see warming up. So it's a tough one for a video because I'll tweet it out when I see it. You kind of got to be glued to your computer, see who's warming up. If it's Gillen or Wiles, I'm going to hit Georgia Southern. If it's Swan or Cole, I'm probably going to hit App State. But that will come down to kickoff. Thank you guys for watching. We got a busy week. There's a lot of day games during the week, followed by the college football playoff. We'll discuss it all. But until then, we will see you guys later, and good luck.